They brought their car to the wrong mechanic. He was a former bomb disposal expert. Welcome back to the channel where everyday heroes get the recognition they deserve. Today's story is about keen observation, explosive expertise, and how one man's specialized military training uncovered a criminal operation that threatened national security. Before we dive into this incredible tale of a mechanic who saw what others missed, drop a comment and tell us which city you're calling home today. And if stories about veterans who use their unique skills to protect communities inspire you, smash that subscribe button and join our family of people who believe that heroes come in work coveralls just as often as they come in uniforms. Tommy Kowalski wiped his hands on a grease-stained rag and looked up from the engine he'd been rebuilding as a dusty black SUV pulled into the service bay of Desert Auto Repair in Tucson, Arizona. At 54, Tommy moved with the careful precision of someone who understood that small mistakes could have big consequences. Though most customers assumed his methodical approach was just the thoroughness of an experienced mechanic who took pride in his work. To the hundreds of customers who brought their vehicles to Desert Auto Repair, Tommy was simply the best mechanic in southern Arizona. A guy who could diagnose problems other shops missed, fix issues that seemed impossible, and somehow always had their cars running better than when they'd bought them new. He worked alone in his shop, preferred cash payments when possible, and had built a reputation for discretion that attracted customers who valued privacy along with quality workmanship. What none of them knew was that Master Sergeant Tommy Kowalski had spent 18 years as an explosive ordnance disposal specialist with the Army, including 4 deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, where he'd disarmed over 300 improvised explosive devices, saved countless lives, and earned 2 Bronze Stars for valor under fire. Tommy had left the military 5 years ago after a roadside bomb had left him with partial hearing loss and nerve damage in his left hand. Injuries that ended his EOD career but hadn't dimmed his ability to spot danger in mechanical systems. Tommy had chosen auto repair not just because he was good with his hands, but because working on engines reminded him of the precision and attention to detail that had kept him alive through multiple combat tours. Every car that came into his shop was a puzzle to solve, a system to understand, and a problem to fix, much like the explosive devices he'd once defused, but without the life-and-death stakes that had defined his military career. The morning of Tuesday, March 2020, brought customers that would test Tommy's commitment to staying out of the dangerous business he'd left behind. The black SUV was driven by a well-dressed man in his 40s who introduced himself as Carlos Mendoza, claiming he needed routine maintenance on his vehicle before a long road trip to Los Angeles. "Just an oil change and general inspection," Mendoza said, his accent suggesting he was originally from somewhere in Central America. "Nothing major. I've got a business meeting in LA tomorrow, so I need to make sure everything's running perfectly." Tommy nodded and began filling out the work order. "No problem. Should have you back on the road in a couple hours." As Mendoza walked to the waiting area, Tommy noticed several details that his EOD training had taught him to catalog automatically. The man was nervous despite his casual demeanor, checking his phone constantly and glancing frequently toward the street. His clothes were expensive, but didn't match his stated occupation as a traveling salesman. Most tellingly, the SUV was riding lower than it should for a vehicle that was supposedly empty, except for luggage. Tommy began his inspection with the routine items: oil, filters, fluid levels, tire pressure. But as he worked, his EOD instincts kept drawing his attention to anomalies in the vehicle's weight distribution and handling characteristics. The SUV was definitely carrying more weight than Mendoza had indicated, and that weight was concentrated in areas that didn't make sense for normal cargo. When Tommy opened the hood to check the oil, he noticed something that made his pulse quicken. The engine compartment showed signs of recent modification: new brackets, additional wiring, and reinforced mounting points that served no apparent automotive purpose. In his 18 years of EOD work, Tommy had learned to recognize the signatures of hidden compartments and concealed cargo systems. Tommy completed the oil change while his mind processed what he was seeing. The vehicle modifications, the customer's nervous behavior, and the unexplained weight distribution created a pattern that his military training recognized as suspicious. But Tommy was no longer a soldier investigating potential threats. He was a civilian mechanic who was supposed to fix cars and mind his own business. As he moved to the undercarriage inspection, Tommy's EOD training kicked into overdrive. Beneath the SUV, he found what appeared to be a custom-built false floor system, complete with hydraulic actuators and electronic controls. The craftsmanship was professional grade, designed to create hidden compartments that would be nearly impossible to detect without specialized knowledge. Tommy had seen similar systems in Iraq, where insurgents used modified vehicles to transport weapons and explosives. The engineering principles were identical: create hidden spaces that could pass casual inspection while carrying prohibited cargo. Whatever Carlos Mendoza was transporting, it wasn't the luggage and business samples he'd claimed. Tommy's hand shook slightly as he photographed the modification system with his phone. His EOD training had taught him to document everything, gather evidence, and think through the implications before taking action. If his suspicions were correct, he was looking at a professional weapons smuggling operation, and Carlos Mendoza was probably not working alone. Tommy completed his inspection and returned to the service area, where Mendoza was pacing nervously and making phone calls in rapid Spanish. Tommy's limited understanding of the language caught fragments about schedules, deliveries, and the need to stay on time. "Everything looks good," Tommy told Mendoza, keeping his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. "Oil's changed. Fluids are topped off. You're all set for your trip." "Excellent," Mendoza replied, his relief evident. "What do I owe you?" As Tommy prepared the bill, he made a decision that drew on 18 years of experience protecting American lives from hidden threats. "Actually, I noticed something with your transmission fluid that I'd like to double-check." "Give me another 20 minutes." Mendoza's expression tightened. "Is it serious? I really need to get going." "Probably nothing," Tommy replied casually. "Better safe than sorry on a long trip, though." As soon as Mendoza reluctantly agreed, Tommy called his friend Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Martinez, who worked with military intelligence at Fort Huachuca, about 60 miles south of Tucson. Sarah was one of the few people who knew about Tommy's EOD background and had told him to call if he ever encountered anything that seemed related to weapons or explosives. "Sarah, it's Tommy Kowalski. I need to run something by you." "Tommy, good to hear from you. What's going on?" Tommy described what he'd found in Mendoza's SUV, using the technical language of someone who had spent years studying concealment systems and weapons transport methods. Sarah listened without interruption, her military training recognizing the significance of what Tommy was reporting. "Tommy, that sounds like a professional smuggling operation. Have you contacted local law enforcement?" "Not yet. I wanted to talk to someone who'd understand the technical aspects first. I'm going to patch you through to Agent Rebecca Sanchez with the ATF. She specializes in weapons trafficking along the border. Stay on the line." Within minutes, Tommy was briefing Agent Sanchez on his findings. She asked detailed questions about the modification system, the customer's behavior, and the vehicle's characteristics. Tommy's technical expertise and EOD background gave him credibility that a typical mechanic wouldn't have had. "Miss Kowalski, we've been tracking a weapons smuggling network that uses modified vehicles to transport military-grade weapons from Mexico into the United States. Your description matches intelligence we've gathered about their methods." "What do you need from me?" Tommy asked. "Can you keep the customer there for another hour? We're assembling a tactical team, but we need time to get into position." Tommy looked toward the waiting area, where Mendoza was becoming increasingly agitated. "I can try, but he's already suspicious about the delay. Do what you can. And, Mr. Kowalski, your EOD background might be important here. If this vehicle is carrying what we think it is, we may need your expertise." Tommy approached Mendoza with a carefully rehearsed explanation about transmission problems that required additional diagnostic time. Mendoza was clearly unhappy, but agreed to wait, making more phone calls and checking his watch constantly. As Tommy pretended to work on the transmission, he used his position under the vehicle to get a closer look at the hidden compartment system. What he found confirmed his worst fears. The modifications were designed to carry long, heavy objects, and the electronic controls suggested remote operation capabilities. In his EOD experience, such systems were typically used for weapons that needed to be deployed quickly and discreetly. ATF agents arrived 35 minutes later, coordinating with local police to establish a perimeter around Desert Auto Repair. Agent Sanchez approached Tommy while tactical officers positioned themselves around the building. "Mr. Kowalski, we need you to walk us through what you found. Your technical assessment could be crucial for officer safety." Tommy led Agent Sanchez and two other investigators through his findings, explaining the engineering principles behind the concealment system and his assessment of what it was designed to carry. His 18 years of EOD experience allowed him to speak with authority about weapons, transport methods, and concealment techniques. "Based on the compartment dimensions and weight distribution, I'd estimate they're carrying assault rifles, possibly automatic weapons," Tommy concluded. "The electronic controls suggest the compartments can be opened remotely, probably for quick deployment. Agent Sanchez nodded grimly. That matches our intelligence about this network's capabilities. When tactical officers approached Mendoza in the waiting area, his reaction confirmed Tommy's suspicions. Mendoza immediately reached for his phone, presumably to warn his associates, but officers subdued him before he could make the call. The search of Mendoza's SUV revealed exactly what Tommy had predicted: 12 military-grade assault rifles, thousands of rounds of ammunition, and sophisticated communication equipment hidden in the custom compartment system. The weapons were traced to a theft from a Mexican military facility, and the communication equipment connected the operation to a larger network trafficking weapons throughout the southwestern United States. Kowalski, Agent Sanchez said as evidence teams processed the vehicle, your identification of this smuggling operation probably prevented these weapons from reaching their intended targets. We believe this network has been supplying weapons to criminal organizations across multiple states. The investigation that followed Tommy's discovery led to the arrest of 17 members of an international weapons trafficking ring. Tommy's technical analysis of the concealment system provided crucial evidence for prosecution, and his EOD expertise helped investigators understand the full scope of the operation's capabilities. How did you know? Agent Sanchez asked Tommy during one of their follow-up interviews. Most mechanics would have missed the signs you picked up on. Tommy looked out at the desert landscape where he'd found peace after years of defusing bombs and hunting weapons caches. 18 years of EOD work teaches you to recognize when something's not what it appears to be. Those modification patterns, the weight distribution issues. I've seen similar systems used to hide explosives and weapons in combat zones. The media attention following the arrests was intense but brief. Tommy declined most interview requests, preferring to let law enforcement speak for the investigation. When pressed by reporters about why he'd risked his safety to investigate a suspicious customer, his answer was simple. Some things are too dangerous to ignore. These weapons could have been used to hurt innocent people. Tommy's role in exposing the smuggling operation earned him recognition from the ATF, FBI, and local law enforcement agencies. Agent Sanchez recommended him for a Civilian Service Award, and Fort Huachuca invited him to speak about the importance of veteran expertise in civilian security roles. But Tommy was most proud of a letter he received from the family of a Border Patrol agent who had been killed by weapons from a similar trafficking network 6 months earlier. The letter thanked him for helping prevent other families from experiencing their loss. Desert Auto Repair became busier following the media coverage, with customers drawn by Tommy's reputation for both mechanical expertise and community protection. But Tommy maintained the same methodical approach to his work, treating every vehicle as a potential puzzle while keeping the observational skills that had once saved lives in combat zones. 6 months after the arrests, Tommy received a visit from Agent Martinez, who had initially connected him with the ATF. She brought news that the weapons trafficking network had been completely dismantled, with operations shut down in 4 states. Your technical analysis was the key to understanding their entire operation, Agent Martinez told him. The modification systems you identified led us to similar setups across their network. Tommy nodded while continuing to work on an engine rebuild. Just glad those weapons won't be used to hurt anyone. There's something else, Agent Martinez continued. The ATF has asked me to see if you'd be interested in consulting work. Your combination of mechanical knowledge and EOD experience makes you uniquely qualified to identify concealment systems. Tommy considered the offer while cleaning his hands on a familiar grease-stained rag. Can I do it part-time? I like working on cars. Absolutely. They're looking for someone who can train investigators and provide technical expertise when needed. Tommy accepted the consulting position, which allowed him to share his specialized knowledge with law enforcement while maintaining his auto repair business. He developed training programs for identifying vehicle modifications, created technical guides for concealment system detection, and provided expert testimony in smuggling cases. His shop became an unofficial training ground where ATF agents and Border Patrol officers learned to recognize the signs Tommy had spotted in Mendoza's SUV. Tommy's ability to explain complex technical concepts in practical terms made him an effective teacher for officers who needed to understand concealment methods without becoming engineering experts. The most important thing, Tommy told one group of trainees, is trusting your instincts when something doesn't look right. Weight distribution, modification patterns, customer behavior, they all tell a story if you know how to read them. Tommy kept his Bronze Stars in a frame behind his desk, not as displays of past glory, but as reminders that service takes many forms. Every day he went to work, he was still protecting American lives. just using different tools and different expertise than he'd used in combat. 3 years after exposing the weapons smuggling operation, Tommy received a commendation from the Department of Homeland Security for his contributions to border security and weapons trafficking prevention. The ceremony was held at his auto repair shop, with federal agents, local officials, and regular customers in attendance. Tommy Kowalski represents the best of American veterans, the DHS representative said during the ceremony. He brought his military expertise to civilian life and used it to protect his community when it mattered most. Tommy's acceptance speech was characteristically brief. "I just did what needed to be done." These skills are useful whether you're defusing bombs overseas or fixing cars in Arizona. It's all about paying attention to details and acting when something's wrong. Local law enforcement agencies began referring suspicious vehicle cases to Tommy, recognizing his unique ability to identify modifications that might escape typical inspection. His shop became a resource for investigators dealing with smuggling, trafficking, and concealment cases throughout southern Arizona. People don't realize how much expertise veterans bring to civilian jobs, Agent Sanchez reflected during a later interview. Tommy's military training made him see things that hundreds of other mechanics would have missed. That observation skills saved lives. Tommy continued operating Desert Auto Repair with the same methodical precision that had defined his military career. Every car that came into his shop received the same careful attention, and every customer was treated with the same professional courtesy, though Tommy's observational skills remained as sharp as ever. The man working under the hood of your car might look like any other mechanic, but his eyes could be scanning for threats with the experience of someone who spent years hunting hidden explosives and weapons. Sometimes the person fixing your transmission is the same person protecting your community from dangers most people never imagine. Tommy Kowalski proved that EOD expertise doesn't become obsolete when the uniform comes off. The skills that made him effective at finding and disarming hidden threats translated perfectly to identifying criminal concealment systems and protecting civilian communities from weapons trafficking. His story reminds us that veterans carry their training and protective instincts into every job they take, often using their specialized knowledge in ways that seem unrelated to their military service, but actually draw on exactly the same skills that kept them alive in combat. Have you ever brought your car to a mechanic who seemed unusually thorough or observant about details that didn't seem automotive-related? Tommy's story shows us that the person working on your vehicle might be someone whose expertise extends far beyond engines and transmissions. The mechanic checking your car could be someone whose attention to detail once saved lives in combat and continues to protect communities in ways you never imagined. Where are you watching from today? Share your thoughts in the comments. And let us know if you've ever encountered a service professional whose background surprised you when you learned more about their story.